President Barack Obama burned rubber racing off the high road in Philadelphia on Wednesday during his return to the trail, ridiculing President Trump for complaining about campaigning in Pennsylvania, for contracting the coronavirus, and for hiding business dealings with China. "We know that he continues to do business with China because he has a secret Chinese bank account. How is that possible?" Mr. Obama asked a crowd of supporters invited to hear him speak in the parking lot of South Philadelphia's sports complex. He was referring to a New York Times report that revealed previously unknown financial holdings in China at a time when the president is criticizing Joseph R. Biden Jr. for ties to that country. "Can you imagine if I had a secret Chinese bank account?" he said. "Can you imagine if I had secret Chinese bank account when I was running for re-election?" His voice straining, he added, "They would have called me Beijing Barry." "It is not a great idea to have a president who owes a bunch of money to people overseas," Mr. Obama said, adding that he had probably paid more in taxes, working a high school job at an ice cream parlor, than Mr. Trump paid during each of his first 2 years as president, $750. Mr. Obama's long-anticipated speech, the first of several he intends to deliver on behalf of the Biden-Harris ticket over the next 2 weeks, marked a reversal of his initial reluctance to engage Mr. Trump directly. And even though his remarks, interrupted from time to time by the honking of horns at the drive-in rally, had moments of his signature soaring rhetoric, he seemed to divert somewhat from the kindler gentler 2016 mantra inspired by his wife, "When they go low, we go high." By the way, his TV ratings are down, the former president said. "So you know that upsets him. But the thing is, this is not a reality show. This is reality. And the rest of us have had to live with the consequences of him proving himself incapable of taking the job seriously." Mr. Obama, who has helped raise millions for his former vice president online but has not appeared in person at campaign events during the coronavirus pandemic, slammed Mr. Trump's failure to contain the outbreak in more personal terms than he has used before. 8 months into this pandemic, cases are rising again across this country, he said. "Donald Trump isn't subtly going to protect all of us. He can't even take the basic steps to protect himself." Mr. Obama, who set aside his lofty campaign style in a go for the jugular moment, seized on a misstep, recalling that Mr. Trump told supporters on Tuesday at a rally in western Pennsylvania that he would not have visited them if his campaign had not been struggling. "The president spent some time in Erie last night, and apparently he complained about having to travel here," Mr. Obama said, laughing. Then he cut the event short. "Poor guy. I don't feel that way. I love coming to Pennsylvania." In Philadelphia in August, for the virtual Democratic National Convention, Mr. Obama delivered a televised speech that cast the election as an existential battle for the future of American democracy. He struck those same themes in his return visit on Wednesday. He said that Mr. Trump's antics were unacceptable and wouldn't be tolerated if the person were a school principal, coach, or even a family member. "Why would we expect and accept this from the President of the United States?" He warned Democrats not to let up because of the polling advantage Mr. Biden is now seeing, and said that some had become lazy in 2016. "I don't care about the poll," Mr. Obama said, referring to Hillary Clinton's polling lead. "There were a whole bunch of polls last time. It didn't work out. We've got to out-hustle the other side," he added, as the Democratic horns began to honk in unison. Mr. Obama is scheduled to hold his next event on Saturday in Miami, followed by another rally in Orlando next week, according to a Democratic official with knowledge of his plans. President Trump complained about the news media's intensive coverage of the coronavirus pandemic at a campaign rally in Gastonia, North Carolina, on Wednesday evening, describing the disease as an annoying inconvenience even as the country's case count and death toll continue to soar. Attacking two television networks, CNN and MSNBC, with barbed epithets, Mr. Trump insisted for the second night in a row that pandemic is rounding the corner. "They hate it when I say it. All you hear is COVID, 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 COVID," Mr. Trump said, repeating the word 11 times. "That's all they put on, because they want to scare the hell out of everyone." Mr. Trump's lament about television news followed a familiar line in his recent speeches, insisting in defiance of all evidence that the coronavirus is rapidly disappearing as an issue. It is not a perspective shared by most voters. A national poll published Monday by The Times found that 51% of likely voters believed the worst of the pandemic was yet to come, compared with 37% who said the worst was over. And that was not the full extent of Mr. Trump's dissembling on the pandemic. He repeated a familiar and false line claiming that the country only appears to have so many cases because there is so much testing, and telling supporters that his Democratic opponent, Joseph R. Biden Jr., was seeking to prolong the pandemic and shut down your country, even though the former vice president has presented a public health agenda aimed at doing the opposite. The president also continued taunting Democratic governors who have imposed restrictions on gatherings and commercial activity to counter the spread of the virus, including North Carolina's Governor Roy Cooper, a Democrat seeking re-election whose popularity has risen in response to his handling of the pandemic. "You got to get your governor to open up your state here," Mr. Trump said, prodding Mr. Cooper. "Open up your state, Governor. It's time." But Mr. Trump also went out of his way to poke at a governor outside the region, once again attacking Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, who was recently targeted by right-wing militants in a kidnapping plot. Mr. Trump also reiterated a call for the jailing of one of his political opponents, a demand he has made often in his political career, and with new frequency toward the end of this campaign. His adversary this time was U.S. Representative Adam Schiff of California, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who Mr. Trump derided for raising the issue of foreign disinformation that targeted Mr. Biden. "Honestly, that guy should be locked up," Mr. Trump said. As he swerved from one topic to the next, Mr. Trump occasionally delivered some elements of a conventional political message, promising record prosperity in a second term and accusing Mr. Biden of plotting with leftists to raise taxes. Yet as usual, it was in his digressions that Mr. Trump showed real passion, including an interlude spent going after the deep staters, former President Barack Obama, whom he referred to using his middle name, Hussein, and the CBS News magazine show 60 Minutes, with which Mr. Trump has been feuding. Describing an interview that he abruptly ended Tuesday week, but which has not yet been broadcast, Mr. Trump claimed that the interviewer, Leslie Stahl, had described him as begging for women to love you, a characterization to which he objected. You'll see, Mr. Trump said, seemingly forecasting some kind of payback. "We have a little surprise for 60 Minutes. Also on Wednesday night, the Sinclair Broadcast Group aired an hour-long town hall with Mr. Trump recorded at the White House a day earlier. Speaking in the Rose Garden with the Sinclair host Eric Bolling and fielding friendly questions from several voters, Mr. Trump boasted that he had been doing a flawless job before the coronavirus hit and branded Mr. Biden as corrupt. If he is re-elected, he vowed, "We're going to finish it strong."